Yo, what's up guys? It's Noah here. I'm incredibly excited to bring you guys this video. This is going to be my first NFL video of the season. In this video, we'll be breaking down the Week 1 slate for Sunday. This will be my first looks at the slate. I am recording this video on Monday. I'll let you guys know my schedule for the NFL season, what days I will be uploading videos and what videos I'll be uploading. For now though, this will be my first video of the season. This will be a first look. I'm going to make these videos every week. I'll have them, come out each Monday where we'll just go through the slate, quarterback, running back, receiver, tight end. We'll even touch on defense for a little bit. We'll, talk through the guys that I like the most, looking at the slate, at the beginning of the week. I will have my full video out, probably either Thursday or Friday where I go, position by position. I'll pretty much do the same thing over again, except, by Thursday, by Friday, we'll have more news, we'll have more clarity on who's going to be starting, for certain teams. There's definitely some question marks for some of these running backs on who's going to be the starter, what workload or what kind of workload we're going to see for some guys. Hopefully we'll have most of that news by Thursday or Friday, and I'll be able to make my, full thoughts video, my full breakdown then. For now, though, we'll just do a first look at each position. I'll talk about the guys that I like most, looking at the slate at the beginning of the week. My plans are for the NFL season to make first look videos on Monday, and then on Tuesday, I will have a video up for the Thursday Night Football Showdown slate. That video will most likely go up sometime Tuesday afternoon. And then, like I said, either Thursday or Friday. I'm probably going to go with Thursday. Thursday, I will make my full video for the the Week 1 slate, and then I'll have my Week 2 slate every other week. That video will most likely go up on Thursday. And then on Sunday night, I will have a video up for the Monday Night Football Showdown slate. So that's my plans for this NFL season. Most likely going to get up 4 videos a week. First look, Thursday night showdown, full main slate breakdown, and then Monday night showdown. Those are the 4 videos I plan on uploading each week. I might, make some new videos as the week goes on, and maybe if I get some ideas on what I want to upload. But for now, I do plan on making 4 NFL videos a week. I am incredibly excited the NFL season's here. It's by far my favorite DFS sport to play, my favorite DFS sport to sweat as well. So we'll break down this Week 1 slate. Just before we do get started, guys, as always, I would appreciate it if you would hit that like button down below. If you are new here, I assume with it being NFL season and with how popular NFL is, we're probably going to have some new faces come to the channel. If you are new here, I would appreciate it if you would hit that subscribe button. Like I said, I plan on uploading a ton of NFL content this year, most likely 4 to 5 videos a week. Would appreciate it if you would hit that subscribe button. Also, be sure to click that notification bell. If you do that, you'll get notified every time I upload. You'll never miss out on any of my new videos. I will still be uploading NBA videos every single day. As long as there's at least 2 NBA games, I'm still going to be getting up NBA content as well. So I will have a ton of NBA and NFL content coming out, every week. Really excited for this time of the year. This is when my channel, DFS, sports, it's just when it's at an all-time high. We've got the NBA playoffs going on. The MLB season, will be wrapping up soon, and we'll have MLB playoffs starting soon. The NFL season starting back up. It's just the best time for sports, in my opinion. So, incredibly excited to bring you guys this video. Incredibly excited to, be talking NFL again. So, let's go ahead and start off at quarterback. We'll start off at the top. So, I'm not going to touch on every single player. I really just want to hit on the guys that I like the most, that I feel like I'm going to have in my lineups. There will definitely be players I skip over that maybe you have some interest in. So, if you ever want to comment anything down below, ask what's my thoughts on this player. I will be sure to try and reply to every comment. But for now, in these videos, I'm just going to try and touch on the guys that I like most. So, at the top, Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson, you can play him every single week. He is expensive on Draftkings. He's $8,100. He's expensive on Yahoo as well. He's $38. But we saw the season that Lamar Jackson had last year. Literally felt like he was putting up about 30 DraftKings points every game. He was like the Christian McCaffrey of quarterbacks, was just getting it done every week. Really only had one somewhat disappointing week when he scored 14 DK points in Week 5 against the Steelers. Lamar Jackson's just a complete stud. If you want to pay up for him, by all means, go ahead. This is Week 1. Pricing did come out early, so, you're going to have soft pricing. You're going to have guys that are too cheap. It should be pretty easy to pay up for Lamar Jackson if that's a route you want to go. He's for sure going to be in my player pool. I will definitely have exposure to Lamar Jackson. Rarely do I full fade him. I just don't know if this is going to be a week where I have, where Lamar is my highest owned quarterback, because I think some of these guys in the mid-range really look good. Like Russell Wilson, I like a ton. against the Falcons. I like this game a lot just to begin with. I mean, we got a 49 total in this game. It is one of the highest totals on the slate. I believe it's a pretty close spread as well. Yeah, the Falcons, 1.5 point home dogs. So incredibly, good game to target for DFS. High total, close spread. Russell Wilson, the only thing that keeps him from being one of the best QBs for fantasy, I mean, he already is to begin with, but I think what keeps him from being the number one QB for fantasy is that the Seahawks just don't throw the ball that much. Last year, I mean, Wilson was only, throwing about 30, 35 passing attempts a game, which is much lower compared to some of the other guys we see, like Matt Ryan on the other side of this game. We'll talk about the Falcons, a very, pass-heavy team. Ryan was throwing the ball 40 to 50 times a game last year. It will be interesting to see if maybe the Falcons run the ball a bit more this year now that they do have Todd Gurley. But Russell Wilson, I like a ton in this game. If I can get to him at 7K, I like, having a lot of exposure to this game. You can definitely stack up Russell Wilson with one of his receivers, whether that's Tyler Lockett or DK Metcalf. You can stack him up easily with one of those two guys. Run it back with Todd Gurley. Run it back with Julio, Calvin Ridley, even Hayden Hurst is going to look like a really good tight end this year. Just so many viable plays from this game. I think Russell Wilson looks really good. On the other side, I like Matt Ryan a ton. He is coming in a bit cheaper on DraftKings than Russell Wilson. I think, Matt Ryan might not be that popular this week. I feel like people are probably going to go to Russell Wilson over Ryan, which, if you want to go that route, by all means, go ahead. But I really like Matt Ryan this week. He's 6,700 on DK. Looking at Yahoo, he is coming in very cheap over here. You got him at $29, same price as Kyler Murray, $1 less than Tom Brady. Like, Matt Ryan looks really good on Yahoo as well, $29. He's probably one of my favorite quarterbacks this week. Like I said, the Falcons just threw the ball a ton last season. Ryan was throwing the ball 40 to 50 times a game. Will they do that again this year with Todd Gurley in the mix now? I'm not exactly sure, but we know this Falcons offense at home. They always play well. They always put up points. It's a great spot for Matt Ryan. High total game, really good spot. I think at 6,700, he looks like a really good pay-up option at quarterback. Ryan just gave you such a high floor last season with how much they did throw the ball, and there's definitely a ceiling for Matt Ryan, especially if this game turns into a shootout, which is for sure possible. He's the guy I like most, but, Wilson, Jackson, even Drew Brees, I think is viable at 6,800. Tom Brady's got a lot of weapons this year, that's for sure. He's got Mike Evans, he's got Chris Godwin, he's got Gronk back. Will he be the same fantasy QB that he was a couple years back? Last year with the Patriots, he had a really disappointing season for DFS and for fantasy. Just wasn't getting it done, didn't give you much of a ceiling last year. I think we're going to see Tom Brady have a pretty good year. He's not going to be as bad as he was last year. I like this Bucs offense. Brady has a lot of weapons with him now. I just don't know if he's going to be someone that I play over, Matt Ryan or over Russell Wilson. I do prefer those guys. I even prefer Drew Brees on the other side. So that's kind of my takes there. Kyler Murray, incredibly high upside player. Tough spot, though, against the 49ers and a really good 49ers defense. But Kyler Murray's got him some, more weapons now. He's got DeAndre Hopkins. I mean, Kyler Murray was already a guy I played a lot last year. I'm for sure going to be on him a lot this year. I just don't know if this is a spot where I want to go too heavy on him in a really tough matchup. I think if I'm not going to those three guys and I'm going down here, to the low 6Ks, Cam Newton's someone I like a lot, 6,100. I assume he's going to be the starter. I'm pretty sure he's already been named the starter for the Patriots. Cam, if you don't remember, I know he didn't play much last year, but this is an incredibly high upside QB when it comes to fantasy with how much he can, do damage with his legs. He can legit throw for 250, 300 yards, rush for 50, 60, 70 yards. He can get you rushing touchdowns. If they get down to the goal line, there's a good possibility they're going to be sneaking it in with Cam Newton rather than handing it off to someone like Sony Michel. So I definitely like Cam Newton here at 6,100 against the Dolphins. The Dolphins defense, not really one I'm too scared of. This was definitely a defense you wanted to attack last year. I know they did make some upgrades to their secondary, but still I think it is a really good spot for Cam Newton. He's 6,100. He is pretty cheap. I think he looks really good at that price tag. He is very cheap on Yahoo as well. You got Cam Newton all the way down here at $26, same price tag as Phillip Rivers. So I think Cam Newton at 26 also looks like a great play over on Yahoo. He's definitely one of my favorite quarterbacks this week, along with Matt Ryan. I'm for sure going to have a lot of exposure to Cam Newton. Teddy Bridgewater, pretty interested in him here against the Raiders. Bridgewater, I expect, has a pretty good season in terms of fantasy. He's going to be a pretty good fantasy QB. We saw Last season when he was with the Saints, whenever he would make starts in place of Drew Brees, because Drew Brees did miss a good amount of time last year, Bridgewater would put up some big games. He did have a lot of weapons with him down in New Orleans, but he still got some weapons here in Carolina. They got DJ Moore. They got Robbie Anderson. You obviously have Christian McCaffrey, who's a complete stud. I like Teddy Bridgewater this year. I'm going to be pretty high on him. I think we're going to see him have some really good games. This is another game that I believe does have a pretty high total. Right now, this game is coming in with let me see if I can find it here. Yeah, 47.5 total, 3-point spread. Should be a pretty good game to target. Definitely have some interest in Bridgewater. Joe Burrow, someone I'm going to be pretty high on this year. This might be a wait and see for me. I want to see how he does in his first NFL start. He is really cheap. He's $5,800 on Draftkings. He's pretty cheap on Yahoo as well. How will he perform against a pretty good Chargers defense? That's to be determined. But this Cincinnati offense, they sneakily have some weapons. You got Joe Mixon, A.J. Green, Tyler Boyd. Like, Burrow has some guys he can get the ball to. It's not like he's just playing out there with a bunch of scrubs. I mean, he's actually got some pretty talented receivers. He's got a talented running back. I'm probably going to have some exposure to Joe Burrow. I don't know if he's going to be like one of my highest owned quarterbacks, but I do like a lot of pieces from this game. I could see myself stacking Joe Burrow with maybe Tyler Boyd, or stacking him with A.J. Green, and then running it back with like Keenan Allen and Austin Eckler. Those are two guys I like quite a bit this week. So definitely have interest in Burrow as a value QB. Even Tyrod Taylor on the other side, he's going to be the starter now with Phillip Rivers on the Colts. Tyrod, when he got opportunities to play, he showed upside. He's a guy that can also, provide upside with his legs. He can rush. He's very cheap, $5,600. It is a good matchup against the Bengals. Like I said, there's a lot of viable options on both sides of this game. Normally, for me, like I target games. I find games that I really like, and then I just play a lot of pieces from that game. That's what I'll be doing this week. I'll have stacks of Seattle, Atlanta. I'll have stacks of this Chargers-Cincinnati game. Really, stacking is how you win in NFL. Quarterback, receiver stacks, and then running it back. That's what you see in the winning GPP lineups. Like, you don't really see, one guy on this team, one guy on this team. Like, you're going to see a lot of stacks win GPP. So definitely like, stacking up that game. If you want to go with Tyrod, stacking with Keenan Allen, and then maybe run it back with like Joe Mixon. That's another viable stack that I do like quite a bit. But I think we kind of covered quarterback, at least the options that really stand out to me that I feel like I'm going to be playing. There's some other guys here that are viable that you could go to. Like Jimmy Garoppolo's got a pretty good matchup, but rarely, is Jimmy Garoppolo someone I want my week riding on. So that's kind of it for quarterback for me, just, skimming through the position. I'll do a full breakdown on Thursday. We'll really highlight the guys I like most heading into the slate. But let's move on to running back now. So here, Christian McCaffrey, going to be the top option every week. It's just a matter of can you fit him in or not. I don't even really care about matchup when it comes to McCaffrey. Like, he's just going to get so much volume. Going to play probably 90+% of the snaps. Going to get 15 to 20 carries, 5 to 10 targets every week. McCaffrey, he was the number one fantasy pick, in drafts this year for a good reason. He's going to be a total stud. There's plenty of value this week. You can find cheap receivers, cheap running backs that are viable. So you should definitely be able to pay up for McCaffrey. I will for sure have exposure to CMC. He's going to be probably one of my highest owned running backs. I'm just not going to include him into the early core plays, but I will have, some updates posted in Thursday's video. I'll have my, full updated core plays posted on Patreon on Sunday morning. You can, check out the Patreon link down below if you would like. McCaffrey, I do like a ton, but this mid-range is really loaded at running back. There's a lot of guys here that are viable. Kamara against the Bucs. The Bucs did have a pretty stout run defense last season. But Kamara just does so much. He can obviously he's involved in the passing game a ton. That's really valuable on DraftKings with it being full PPR scoring. Kamara, there was talks about him maybe holding out for his contract, but I'm pretty sure all signs point to him playing. He returned to practice, so he should be ready to go this week. No Mark Ingram on the Saints anymore, so we don't have to worry about anybody taking carries away from him. They still do have Latavius Murray, but Kamara is obviously the number one guy. 10 to 15 carries, most likely a pretty good projection for Kamara. Going to get anywhere from like 5 to 10 targets. He's involved in the passing game a ton. This is a game that has some shootout potential. Definitely have interest in Kamara. We talked about Austin Eckler. I like him quite a bit at 7K. He's going to be the guy this year. No Melvin Gordon on the Chargers anymore, so Eckler should be looking at a pretty heavy workload. He's another guy that gets a lot of work in the passing game. So I definitely like Eckler. Josh Jacobs probably gets one of the best matchups on the board. The Panthers last season were incredibly bad against the run. I don't expect him to be much better this year, especially since they lost Luke Kuechly. So, we talked about stacks you could do in that game. You could stack up Bridgewater and DJ Moore, or Bridgewater and, Robbie Anderson, maybe running it back with Josh Jacobs. Definitely like Jacobs here. Joe Mixon as well, another guy that really stands out. Just going to get so much volume. Clearly the number one guy for the Bengals. He signed a big contract extension, so he's going to be their running back. He's only $6,700. I definitely have interest in him as well. But I would say probably my favorite guy in this mid-range is Miles Sanders. $6,300 on DraftKings. Like him a lot at that salary. He's coming in at a pretty nice price over on Yahoo as well. You got Miles Sanders coming in at $24. So this is a pretty favorable spot here against the Redskins. Redskins, not really a defense I'm too worried about. Definitely struggled against the run last season. Sanders, he's been, dealing with some injuries during the offseason, but it's clear that, he's going to be the number one guy, assuming he's fully healthy, which it looks like he's going to be. He's going to be their number one running back, should get a ton of volume. We saw it last season whenever Jordan Howard got injured. Jordan Howard's not even on the team anymore, but whenever Jordan Howard got injured and Sanders, was able to step in into the number one role, he just produced so well. Was getting 15 to 20 carries a game. Miles Sanders is another guy that can get, work in the passing game, was getting 5 to 6 targets a week. It's a very favorable matchup. He's only $6,300. Sanders was another guy that, was getting drafted in the first round in fantasy drafts, and for a good reason. He's going to be a workhorse back this year, or at least he should be. They still have Boston Scott they could give some carries to. I think they have Corey Clement as well, but, I don't think you're really worried about those two guys just taking, a ton of work away from Sanders. Sanders is still going to be the number one guy, should get a large majority of the volume. He's one of my favorite running backs this week. Definitely like him at $6,300 on DK. I think that is really just way too cheap for Sanders. I thought he was going to be one of the more expensive running backs this week, especially when you saw that, he had a matchup against the Redskins. I was expecting him to be priced up there with guys like Cook, Kamara. I think DraftKings definitely messed up here, leaving Sanders at $6,300. And then you got Chris Carson, Todd Gurley, two guys I do like as well, in that Seattle-Atlanta game. Carson and Gurley are both really cheap on Yahoo. If you look over here, both of them are $18. They're cheaper than guys like Mostert, Ingram, Taylor. Same price as Devin Singletary. I think Carson and Gurley both look like great plays on Yahoo. Gurley didn't have the best season last year, but did kind of turn it on towards the end of the year. We saw, when Gurley gets volume, he can be very good for fantasy. When he's getting touches, he can, make them efficient touches. It's a very high-scoring game, or at least expect to be a high-scoring game. I'm not really too worried about the Seattle's defense. They did lose Jadeveon Clowney, so that, takes one guy out of their defensive line that was really good. I like Gurley quite a bit at his Yahoo price. Chris Carson as well, $18 I think is too cheap on Yahoo. Going to get a ton of volume. He's clearly the number one guy for the Seahawks. We know the Seahawks team likes to run the ball a ton. If they get up early in this game, they will pound the rock, and Carson will probably get anywhere from 20 to maybe 25 touches. He doesn't get too much work in the passing game compared to some other guys, but was still getting about 3 to 4 targets a game last year. Definitely like Carson as well. Those two guys I think look really good on Yahoo, and even on DraftKings, at $6,200, $6,100. I think they look like pretty good options on DK as well. But then some other guys, not a ton stands out to me in this 5K range. It's a really good spot for Marlon Mack. What is his workload going to look like, though, this year? They did draft Zach Moss, who could take some work from Marlon Mack. Mack was really efficient, though, when he got touches last year. He would get about 15 to 20 touches a game. He's one of those guys that doesn't get a ton of work in the passing game, which is always a concern. But it is such a good matchup. the Jaguars' defense, they were really good a couple years back, but this is just not the same team anymore. The Jaguars are probably going to be one of the worst teams in the league this year, if I had to guess. This is going to be a spot we want to attack a lot. Picking on Jacksonville is going to be something we do a lot this season. I think Marlon Mack at $5,300, is definitely viable in that 5K range. Ronald Jones, I'm a bit worried about him. With the Bucs signing Leonard Fournette, what is Ronald Jones' workload going to look like? I still saw some reports that Ronald Jones is supposedly going to be their number one guy, but that's a dice roll. Who really knows? I wouldn't be surprised if you see them split the touches. I don't think Fournette's just going to, they didn't sign Fournette just for him to be a bench warmer. He's going to get touches. It's just a matter of how much does he take away from Ronald Jones. I'm a bit worried there, so that'll probably be a stay away from me, especially because it's, Saints did have a pretty stout run defense last season. It's not the best spot for Ronald Jones in general. I feel slightly better with Marlon Mack, at $5,300. But then the value guy I want to talk about, we do have some value at this position. So with Adrian Peterson getting, sent to the Lions, he's no longer on the Redskins. I think it's pretty clear that Antonio Gibson most likely is going to be the number one guy for the Redskins this year. They did draft him in the 3rd round. I'm assuming he's going to be the starter, come Sunday. That'll be news we'll have to keep an eye on as the week goes on. But my best guess is that, Gibson's going to be the starter. Should get a majority of the work. I'm not saying he's going to be an every down back to begin with, but he should definitely get a good amount of the touches, a pretty large majority of the touches. They do have Bryce Love. They do have Peyton Barber. They do have, I believe, I can't remember the other guy they have, J.D. McKissick. They do have a pass down back, so they got some other guys that they could look to, but it seems like Gibson's going to be their number one back. He is very cheap. Getting a running back at $4K, DraftKings did up the, salary floor. Normally we saw, the salary floor last year was actually $3K. That was the cheapest you would see players priced. They actually upped their salary floor to $4K this year, but $4K is still pretty cheap if we're going to get a starting running back, that can catch balls, that can, should be effective here. Philly did have a pretty stout run defense last season, but I'm not too worried about that when you're getting a running back at only $4K that should see somewhat close to a starter's workload. He's very cheap on both sites. He is cheap on Yahoo as well. You got Gibson coming in at just $11 on Yahoo, so I definitely like him as a value play over there as well. I mean, he looks like a clear value to me on both sides. This will be news we have to keep an eye on, but I'm assuming he's going to be the starter heading into week 1. And if that's the case, he is definitely going to be one of the better values on the slate, just in my opinion. Let's go ahead and move on to receiver now. So receiver at the top, you got Michael Thomas, really expensive on DraftKings, $9K, but fantastic spot here against the Bucs. I don't think the Bucs really have anyone that can slow down Michael Thomas. The Bucs were a pretty big pass funnel last season. They were really good against the run, but incredibly bad against the pass. It was actually they were towards the bottom of the league in terms of pass defense, and then they were top in the league against the run. So it is a very favorable spot for this pass game from the Saints. If you want to stack up Drew Brees and Michael Thomas, you can pretty much do that every week in my opinion. No different this week. Michael Thomas, definitely one of the better pay-up options at receiver. But I do like the savings you get going with Julio Jones. And Julio, since I like Matt Ryan so much, I am definitely going to stack him up with, Julio Jones. Jones is probably one of my favorite receiver plays this week. 7,700 on DK coming in, 1,300 less than Michael Thomas. You got Julio at $32 on Yahoo, coming in $6 less than Thomas as well. I wouldn't be surprised if Julio outscores Thomas, even Julio winds up being the highest scoring receiver on the slate. I think this is a really good spot for him. Seattle, I'm not too worried about their secondary. Julio is just such a good receiver. I mean, I don't really care who he's going up against. This dude can just win any matchup, no matter who it is across from him. It's a high total game, a game we expect to be high scoring. This Falcons team, I expect, throws the ball a ton this year. Even with Todd Gurley, they should still be a pretty pass-heavy offense. They're playing at home in the Dome, where they tend to always put up points. Love Julio this week. When he's healthy, this is, in my opinion, probably the best receiver in football. It's close between him and Michael Thomas, but I love Julio this week at 7,700. Going to definitely be stacking him up with Matt Ryan for sure. There's a lot of other good options, though. If you want to go to someone like Devontae Adams, Minnesota, their secondary not nearly as good as it used to be. They lost Xavier Rhodes. I don't even know who they're going to have line up across from Devontae Adams. I'm pretty sure it's going to be a rookie. Devontae Adams, this is another incredibly high upside guy for DFS. Gets a ton of targets, should get a ton of volume in this Packers offense. I don't think they really have anyone else that Aaron Rodgers is going to be looking to. They can run the ball with Aaron Jones, but are they going to be throwing the ball to, Alan Lazard? Is he even still on the team? MVS, are these guys still on the team? I assume they are. They have Alan Lazard, they have Marquez Valdes-Scantling, but are these guys, Aaron Rodgers isn't going to be throwing to those guys much. Devontae Adams is still going to get a ton of targets, probably 10-plus targets every week. He was one of the guys you could just pencil in for 10 targets every week. Aaron Rodgers always looks his way whenever he drops back. Minnesota secondary was tough a couple years back, but not the same secondary now. It is a very good spot for Devontae Adams. I like him as well quite a bit, and I think he's going to be pretty low owned this week, which does make him appealing for GPPs. And then you got the Tampa Bay receivers, Chris Godwin, Mike Evans. How are these guys going to play with Tom Brady? That's to be determined. If I'm going to play one of them, I think I do prefer Chris Godwin. I think he's just the higher upside receiver. Both these guys should be pretty good for fantasy this season. It may be tough, though, depending on or picking out which one has the better game each week. Godwin was the guy that showed more upside last season, played well with Jameis Winston, so we'll see how he does this year with Tom Brady. I do like Godwin, but I think I would prefer like Julio and Devontae and Thomas over him. DeAndre Hopkins, 6,800. How is he going to perform in this Arizona offense? I think he's going to have a great season. Kyler Murray is just such a talented quarterback. Kyler Murray will get DeAndre Hopkins the ball. He's 6,800. He is coming in pretty cheap. It's not the best spot against San Francisco. They still do have a pretty tough secondary. Richard Sherman at this point in his career, I don't think he's nearly as good of a corner as he used to be. He's still pretty solid last season, but not a guy I would be too worried about when it comes to someone like DeAndre Hopkins. Hopkins is another one of those guys that can literally just win any matchup. Doesn't really matter who's lined up across from him. So he's viable for GPPs. Thielen as well, he should have a big season this year. Stephon Diggs no longer on the team. Thielen should get a ton of volume every week. It might be a tough matchup. You might see a lot of Jair Alexander, who was a really good corner last year, and I expect going to be a very good corner again this year. He could see a lot of Alexander, but Thielen's another guy that's just going to get a ton of volume. Kirk Cousins doesn't really have a ton of other guys to throw the ball to. So he's for sure viable. Like, this mid-range is just really loaded. There's just so many good plays. I mean, Allen Robinson, I know Mitchell Trubisky sucks, but Allen Robinson is just so good. This guy, when he gets volume, which he does pretty much every week, he can be incredibly efficient. This Detroit secondary, I'm not too worried about. They lost Darius Slay. Tyler Lockett as well. I love that game in general, so I'm for sure going to be stacking up Lockett and Russell Wilson, running it back with Julio, Calvin Ridley, Gurley. I just like so many plays in that game. We talked about Keenan Allen, who I have a good amount of interest in. Calvin Ridley, 6,100, I think is a little bit too cheap on DraftKings. Definitely someone I'll be targeting for sure. Even Julian Edelman against the Dolphins. How is Julian Edelman going to perform with Cam Newton? I think he's going to have a pretty good season. Will he get the 12, 13 targets every week that he was getting, last season? I guess that's to be determined, but I'm pretty high on Cam Newton this week. So I will definitely have some exposure to Julian Edelman at 6K. Odell is so cheap, 5,900. It's crazy seeing Odell this cheap, but, he wasn't great last year. This is a tough spot against a good Ravens secondary. Odell's someone I usually always want to have exposure to, though, just because I think there's so much upside for him. All he needs is one big play, and he can pay off his price. He can take a slant 85 yards to the house. He's just that good. Another guy I do have a bit of interest in GPPs as a lower-owned play. DK Metcalf, I think he's viable in both cash and GPPs. I mean, just a fantastic matchup. Incredibly high-scoring game, at least it should be. Metcalf for 5,800, I do like quite a bit as well. I think I would prefer Calvin Ridley for a bit more on the other side of that game, but Metcalf is definitely viable. T.Y. Hilton against this Jaguar secondary that, I don't expect to be any good this season. T.Y. Hilton is definitely viable at 5,800. I do prefer Hilton, when he's, at home in the Dome, because that's when he plays well, or that's when he plays his best, as it seems. But he should have a pretty good year this year. They did get Phillip Rivers, who, is a pretty good quarterback, can get the ball to Hilton. I think, Rivers is definitely better than Jacoby Brissett, just in my opinion. So Hilton, 5,800, also viable. Terry McLaurin, someone I just love to roster in DFS. I played him a ton last year. I'm going to play him a ton again this year. I like this game a lot. As you can see, I've already got, Miles Sanders, Antonio Gibson. These are guys I like a lot from that game. Definitely going to have some stacks here. For sure I'm going to be on Terry McLaurin at 5,600. He's someone that I do like quite a bit in the 5K range. Henry Ruggs, he should be the clear number one receiver for the Raiders this year. It's going to be interesting to see how he performs. I think I want to probably be on him, before everyone else gets on him. I think a lot of people are probably going to, take the wait-and-see approach on Henry Ruggs. I do want to have exposure to him here. I'm not too worried about this Panthers secondary. This is a good spot for Henry Ruggs. He is pretty cheap. This is a very high upside receiver. Showed a ton of upside in college in Alabama when he was at Alabama. So definitely like Henry Ruggs at 5,100. I know I've talked about a lot of guys, but man, week one, it just feels like everyone's too cheap. I feel like I have to mention everyone almost. And then probably one of my favorite values, I think he's going to be pretty popular this week, but Desean Jackson, 4,900, looks like a really good value this week. He was really good last season before he got hurt. He had a huge game week one last year against this same Redskins team, and then he got hurt in week two, and then, was able to return week 9 against the Bears and then got hurt again. Whenever he's healthy, Desean Jackson does have a ton of upside. He's a guy that can go deep, has big playability. This is a Redskins secondary that I'm not worried about at all. I really like this spot for Desean Jackson. Alshon Jeffrey, I don't believe is going to play for the Eagles this week, so it's going to be some combination of D-Jax, Dallas Goedert, and Zach Ertz getting a large majority of the targets from Carson Wentz. Greg Ward might mix in some as well. But D-Jax should operate as the number one wide receiver this week. Zach Ertz obviously going to get a ton of looks. Goddard will get looks as well. But I definitely like D-Jax at 4,900. I think he has big-time upside against this, pretty bad Redskins secondary. Definitely like him on, DK at 4,900. On Yahoo, he's not as cheap over there. He's same prices like Julian Edelman, Manny Sanders, Tyler Lockett. You do have D-Jax also at $20, same price as those guys. He's for sure still in play on Yahoo. I just think he looks more appealing on DraftKings. We'll talk about someone that I like at their Yahoo price. There's a lot of underpriced guys on Yahoo this week. We'll be sure to hit on the guy that I like there real quick. But I think we kind of touched on receiver, mainly the guys that stand out to me. There could be some values here like Curtis Samuel, 4,600. I still expect him to be the number 2 receiver behind DJ Moore. They do have Robbie Anderson now, but I think Robbie Anderson's most likely going to activate or operate as the number 3 guy. Samuel should get some decent targets. 4,600, he's someone you could look to. Looking at the low 4s, Jalen Reagor's not expected to play, so that's another reason why, Desean Jackson looks really good. Still no Jalen Reagor or Jalen Reagor, and then you obviously Alshon Jeffrey doesn't seem like he's going to play either. There was one guy that I did want to mention from the Raiders, Bryan Edwards, really cheap on DraftKings, 4,200. I think he's someone that could be viable here. We do know that Tyrell Williams is going to be out for the season, so the top 3 receivers for the Raiders are going to be Henry Ruggs, Bryan Edwards, and Hunter Renfrow. Bryan Edwards should get a good amount of opportunity here. He's going to be their number 2 receiver behind Henry Ruggs. Hunter Renfrow will operate out of the slot. So for 4,200 against the Panthers secondary, that as we talked about, or at least as I've said, I'm not too worried about the Panthers secondary. I'm not too worried about their defense this year. I think they're going to have a pretty bad defense overall. Edwards is another guy you could consider as a value. He will for sure be in my value pool come Sunday when I'm building out lineups. Definitely a guy I would get some exposure to, if I'm looking for a cheap receiver. I did want to mention Hollywood Brown as well. He's really cheap, 5,100 on DraftKings. He showed a ton of upside last season. Was pretty inconsistent. He'd have some big games, then he'd have some, bad games. He's more of a high floor, high ceiling play. There's big time upside for Ruggs. He did show a lot of upside in the playoffs. In that playoff game against the Titans, he did get 11 targets, 7 catches, 126 yards. He had a huge week 1 last year against the Dolphins. He only caught 4 balls, but 147 yards, 2 touchdowns. Marquise Brown has a ton of upside. He should be their number 1 receiver this year. He should get more playing time than he did last year. Last year, I know he wasn't like a guy that played every snap. He would play 60-70% of the snaps. I think he's going to be closer to an every down receiver this year. At least he should be, in my opinion. 5,100, price in there in that same range with Desean Jackson. He's another guy you could go to. We talked about Henry Ruggs as well at that same price. So yeah, I know I talked about a lot of receivers, but I wanted to break it down, as much as I could, really give you guys all of the players that I really like the most. Before we end out receiver, I do want to hit on, Yahoo. So if you're new to playing on Yahoo, I know some of you guys, maybe started playing on Yahoo because, I'm making videos up there. I play on Yahoo every single day. I do Yahoo videos for NBA. If you don't know, Yahoo does include the Sunday night game on their main slate, whereas DraftKings does not. DraftKings going with a 12-game slate ending at, 425. Yahoo including 13 games, so they'll have the Sunday night game on their main slate. This Rams-Dallas game on Sunday night is a very viable game to target for DFS. 52 total, 3-point spread. Should be a high-scoring game. Should be a close game. You got guys like Dak Prescott, Amari Cooper, even Michael Gallup, CeeDee Lamb, Ezekiel Elliott. Just so many viable plays on the Dallas side. And then on the Rams side, if you wanted to go to Jared Goff, he's really cheap on Yahoo. I wouldn't mind him. You got Cam Akers, who I think is probably going to be the starter for the Rams come Sunday. He's viable as a cheap running back. Then you got the Rams receivers. With no Brandon Cooks, I think it's going to be clear that Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods are going to be the number 2 or the 2 top receivers for the Rams. You got Tyler Higbee, who had a great year last year towards the end of the season. I think he's poised to have another big year. A lot of viable plays from this game. Definitely want to hit on Robert Woods though. He's coming in at only $16 on Yahoo, which I think is just a stupid price point. Robert Woods is probably going to be one of my highest owned receivers on Yahoo. If you look at their pricing, he's the same price as Anthony Miller, N'Keal Harry, Mike Williams. Miller should have a pretty solid year this year as a number 2 receiver behind Allen Robinson. Mike Williams as well. He always has upside. But Robert Woods, man, I think I definitely would prefer Robert Woods over those guys. He's clear to get 10-plus targets a game this year. No Brandon Cooks. Jared Goff's going to be looking to Woods, Kupp, and Higbee. Those are going to be the guys that just get all the volume from Jared Goff. Last year, I mean, Robert Woods showed a ton of volume, or a ton of upside, getting a ton of volume late in the season. 18 targets, 9 targets, 9, 11, 12. Like, that's what we look for. We want to find guys that are getting a lot of volume, a lot of looks. And that was the case last year with Robert Woods. He's way too cheap this week on Yahoo at $16. Looks like one of the better, value receivers, which is crazy to say that Robert Woods is a value, but he looks like a great value on Yahoo. Probably going to be one of my highest owned receivers over there. I did want to mention him in that Sunday night game. And, if you're playing on Yahoo this week, don't be afraid to stack up that Rams Dallas game, even though it's the late game on the slate, and even though your lineup's going to be towards the bottom of the standings heading into that game, there's a lot of good games or a lot of good plays in that game. You could definitely see a couple guys wind up in the winning GPP lineup on Yahoo from that Rams Dallas game because high total, 52-point total, 3-point spread. A lot of guys are underpriced on both sides of that game, so definitely like Robert Woods. For sure want to get exposure to him on Yahoo. We'll run through tight end, and then we'll hit on defense real quick, just before we end the video. So at tight end, you got George Kittle as our most expensive option here, really to no surprise. Travis Kelce playing Thursday night. He's not on the slate. So Kittle, the number, one tight end. Fantastic matchup against the Cardinals. The Cardinals were one of the worst teams against tight ends last year. It was kind of, just play tight ends against the Cardinals, and you would just print money. I don't know. I think they did make some additions, during the offseason. They will be much better against tight ends this year, if I just had to guess. They did get Isaiah Simmons from Clemson. So Isaiah Simmons, a linebacker, but can play safety, can really just play everything. He's going to obviously help improve their defense against tight ends. So it's still a good spot for George Kittle just because, he's so good. He's another one of those guys that, McCaffrey, Thomas, like these guys, you don't really care who they're going up against. They have such high floors, such high ceilings. Kittle's for sure in play, but he is really expensive, and we do have options for cheaper. Like Zach Ertz, if I'm paying up at tight end, I think Zach Ertz is my favorite play. I love the matchup for him against the Redskins. With no Alshon Jeffrey, no Jalen Reagor for the Eagles, Zach Ertz should get, like the massive volume that we saw him get towards the end of last season when he was like the only healthy receiver, it seemed like. Zach Ertz, 5,800, I think is my favorite tight end to pay up for. Love the matchup against the Redskins. Not too worried about their, pass defense. Ertz is not as expensive as someone like, Kittle. Even Mark Andrews is more expensive than Ertz. I definitely like Ertz at 5,800. I think he's a really good play. He should get a ton of, volume just this week, and at least until Jeffrey and Reagor come back, he should get a ton of volume every week. Tight end's usually a position I like to pay down. We do have some value here this week that we'll for sure hit on. Hunter Henry, I'm pretty high on Hunter Henry this season. 5,300 against the Bengals. I think he's for sure viable. Gronk, I think, is going to pick up a lot of ownership this week just because, it's week one. There's a lot of people who normally don't play DFS or don't play DFS often. They'll see Gronk priced at 4,900 and just want to click his name because, Gronk is obviously a very well-known name, incredibly good tight end a couple years back. Will he be the same this year? When he was with the Patriots, 2 years ago, didn't have the best season in terms of fantasy. I don't even know if they have they don't even have his game log up from 2 years ago, but I know he didn't have the best year last year, or 2 years ago, excuse me. He didn't even play last year. Now that he's reunited with Tom Brady, this Bucs offense, I think, can be pretty good this year. How is Gronk going to play? 4,900, he's not expensive like some other guys. It's not like he's priced up there with Ertz and Kittle and Andrews. So I guess he's at least somewhat viable. I don't know if I'm going to be heavy on Gronk, though. There are some other tight ends I like. Like, if I'm going cheap this week, I think Hayden Hurst is probably my favorite tight end. Hayden Hurst is poised to have a huge year this year. He looks like he's going to be the every down tight end for the Falcons. They got rid of Austin Hooper, who's now on the Browns. They picked up Hayden Hurst. And Hayden Hurst, when he was in college at South Carolina, he showed a lot of upside. A guy that can catch, 7, 8 balls. He can get a ton of targets. We talked about how much this Falcons team, throws the ball, how they're so pass heavy. 4,300 for Hayden Hurst. I think he is a top value at the position. If you can't pay up for Zach Ertz, I think Hayden Hurst at 4,300 looks like the best value. It's kind of the same on Yahoo for me. Like, you have Ertz at 22 that you can pay up for, who I obviously like a lot. But then you also have Hayden Hurst all the way down here at 15, who looks like a great value as well. So definitely some value plays here. Hayden Hurst, probably my favorite value overall. Dallas Goedert, don't mind him either, but, probably would try and just play Zach Ertz. I would definitely prefer Hurst over Goddard. So mainly tight end for me. Really like Zach Ertz. Really like Hayden Hurst. Those are the two guys that stand out to me the most. Just looking at this slate on Monday, I'll be able to give you guys my full thoughts, what I'm thinking about, heading into week one. on my video that I'll post either Thursday or Friday. But for now, skimming through tight end, Ertz and Hurst, kind of rhymes there. Ertz and Hurst, two guys I like the most. We'll just run through defense real quick. I don't spend too much time on defense. Defense for me, I really just kind of play whatever defense fits in my lineup. I think I usually always like to target cheap home defenses. Not saying I'm going to play the Redskins, but like the Jaguars against the Colts, I could see Phillip Rivers maybe turn the ball over. I know the Jaguars don't have the best defense right now, but they're 2,300. They're playing at home. The Colts offense, it should be solid this year, but not a team you expect to put up a ton of points every week. So I don't mind the Jaguars. The Panthers against Derek Carr and the Raiders. Carr's not a quarterback I think's that good. The Panthers, their defense isn't going to be that good either, but they're cheap. They're playing at home, 2,500, for sure viable. The Bills look like the best team to pay up for if you can against the Jets. I don't expect the Jets' offense to be too good this year. Sam Darnold, we know, will turn the ball over. Definitely like the Bills' defense at the top if you can pay for them. Eagles against the Redskins, we saw how much Dwayne Haskins turned the ball over last year. They've already come out and said that he's going to be the Week 1 starter. So it's a pretty good spot for the Eagles D. If you don't have any exposure to the Redskins side, you could definitely play the Eagles defense. The Patriots defense against Miami, 3,200 if you want to go there. But yeah, that's kind of just a quick look at defense. The Lions, 2,700 against the Bears. Honestly, I think that's probably going to be the most popular defense of the week, just because everyone knows that Mitchell Trubisky's not that good. He will definitely turn the ball over, will take sacks. The Lions are playing at home. They're really cheap. So I think they're probably going to be the most popular defense this week if I had to guess. But that's really just my quick run through of defense. I don't want to spend too much time on defense just because it's already such a hard position to predict. The highest priced defense could get outscored by the lowest, not saying it's going to happen, but the Redskins could outscore the Bills and no one would be because it's defense, no one really knows. It's kind of, I really wish they would get rid of defense, just add in another flex spot, give us a little bit more salary. I hate playing defenses, man, because I feel like it always either screws my lineup or I'll have a really, really good lineup and then I have -2 for my defense. And it's just are you kidding me, man? Why is a defense keeping me from winning a GPP? But it's what it is. We have to play a defense, so I did want to at least mention a couple that, I had interest in. But I think we broke it all down for Week 1, guys. I know this video is going to be pretty long, but I really want to try and give you guys as much information, as much analysis as I can. I will have my full breakdown for this slate on either Thursday or Friday, where I talk through each position again, really highlight the guys I like most, try and really narrow down my player pool as the week goes on, and just touch on the guys that I think I'm going to be playing the most come Sunday. Tomorrow on Tuesday, I will have my video up for the Thursday Night Football Showdown slate as well. So if you're playing Showdown for Thursday, be sure to check that video out. Sunday night, I will have my video up for the Monday Night Football Showdown slate. So a ton of NFL content coming up, within this week, 3 or 4 videos coming out a week for NFL. I'll still be making NBA videos every single day as well, as long as we have at least 2 NBA games, as long as we have, decent slates, I guess. Until we get just showdown slates, I'm still going to be uploading NBA videos every day. So a ton of content coming out on the channel right now, guys. Would appreciate it if you would hit that subscribe button, click that notification bell, so that way you get notified every time I upload. And if you did enjoy this video, be sure to drop a like down below. And if you would like to get more content from me, I do have stuff available on Patreon that is linked down below in the description. You can check out all the content I do have to offer over there. But best of luck this week, guys. Thank you so much for watching. We will see you again tomorrow with my video for the Thursday Night Showdown slate. See you guys then. Peace.